Hey y'all! Oh my god. Hey everyone, what's up? It's Brandon Lord. Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm gonna be going over my top 5 interview tips. Now, I thought of this idea because I was recording my podcast with Katie, the Literary Latte podcast on all podcast platforms. Rate and review us 5 stars. Thank you so much. And we were talking about interviewing and stuff like that. I don't even remember how it came up. I think maybe because Katie's starting a new position in her job. I don't know. But it came up and we started talking about it. We were kind of getting into how some of the things people really worry about with interviews isn't really necessary to worry about. I started a new job, I want to say fairly recently, but honestly at this point, it's 9 months. It's crazy how time passed. But December of last year, I left a job I hated and started a new job. And I will actually say for this new job, there wasn't too much interviewing with different companies. This one kind of worked out. But prior to that, I left another job early 2022 and started the job I hated in February. When I was trying to find a new job, I had never left a job before because I was still at my first accounting job out of college. And I was really nervous and I didn't I had been with it for 4 years, I think. I didn't remember how to interview or what to even do. So there was definitely some failures in the interviewing process. You know, the thing with failures, you learn a lot so you can get successes in the future. Put it on a shirt. It's really true. And that's why I think maybe transitioning from my last job to the one I currently have kind of went a little more seamlessly. So let's get started with the tips. I decided to do just 5 quick tips because I feel these are the 5 you kind of really only need, or I don't want to say only need, but if you have these 5, you're good. Number 1, you do, I believe, have to look presentable. Now, I feel when you want to look your best, of course, but at the end of the day, they're not gonna necessarily not hire you if they don't feel like you look your best. I think especially with Zoom and everything, and now this is kind of a sub point to this one of looking presentable. I feel a lot of the Zoom interview tips were make sure your lighting's immaculate, your background's great, you look like you're in front of the Taj Mahal. No. Yes, they need to be able to see you, but if you don't have the best angle or you don't have the best lighting, that's not gonna stop them from hiring you. I say that too because with my recent job, I had my ring light set up, I had my phone set up for the Teams interview. I was ready to look the best. I had my suit jacket on because with Zoom, you only have to look good from here up. So I was ready to go. My hair was good. It was great. But then I had my phone the wrong way. I thought it was going to show me a certain way, but it had me flipped. For the first round of interviews, it was 2 people. The person who first logged in was oh, your camera's flipped. And I was oh shit, let me fix this. And so I'm trying to fix it, but my tripod's just not cooperating with me at all. So I ended up having to prop my phone below me on my laptop where the ring light was barely hitting. And it truly was the worst from below angle, horrifying lighting. I looked terrible. It was just there were shadows. It just wasn't good lighting. I looked bad. But it didn't really matter. They didn't end the interview there and be no wait, you look awful, bye. And I ended up getting the job. So it's fine. Did my boss, who was also in that first interview, quit 2 months later? Yes. But it wasn't because of me. At least I hope not. But, so essentially, yes, I think you should look presentable. But, I don't know. Do you have to wear a suit? You could probably wear nice slacks and a good polo. And I feel that should be fine. Number 2, you definitely want to research the company before going into the interview. And this is mainly because they'll usually ask questions well, what made you want to work here? What about our company made you want to transition from your current job to this job? And so you definitely want to have some basic knowledge of the company, what the company is, what they stand for, what they sell or what their service is, stuff like that. And maybe a couple recent events, some loose knowledge, oh yeah, I just saw this recent article where you sold this or you made this or you were a part of this and oh my gosh, it was just so great. I loved it. I had to be a part of this company. And also, you definitely just want to research the company because you want to see if it's actually a company you would want to work with. Now, my third tip, you definitely want to like see the job criteria and like the description, the skills, the requirements, and really like look into that, especially with the responsibilities and all of that. You want to see like if you're doing things similar in your current or like past jobs so you can connect it. Because even if, let's say, it's a job that you haven't really done anything specifically like what they're asking, chances are you've done something pretty similar, and then you can kind of connect the two. Like if they're asking you like, oh, you need to deal with like audit stuff, like maybe that's like a requirement like for this job. Now let's say you haven't really dealt too much with audit stuff, but if in a current job or a previous job you've worked with auditors or you've provided journal entry backups or documentation to auditors, you can kind of mention that and maybe mention a little about what they did and that you're familiar with their duties and like working with them at least. And even though you don't have like, you didn't work with them at such like a great capacity, you have a baseline knowledge of working with them and experience working with them that could like prove that you're qualified for this job. Also with the requirements as far as like, you know, the degree, the years of experience. Usually, yes, you need a degree. Years of experience, I feel like it could go back and forth. I think the main thing, again, is if you're able to prove that you have some experience with something related to the job, it should work out, or it could work out. It couldn't, but it could. Or also, let's say there's a task that you have no knowledge of, you haven't even done anything similar to that. You can kind of take the route of saying, I don't have much experience with this, but it's definitely something that I've wanted to get exposed to and kind of like grow in my career. Like I think for one job, I think the one before the one I have now, dealing with revenue was one of the requirements or one of the descriptors of the job. I never really dealt with revenue, but I kind of like had seen an entry or something like that. Like I kind of dealt with a rec at one point. So I made sure to mention that and be like, I have a little bit of exposure, but that's definitely something I would be very much open to learning about and taking on and trying to do that. There's always a way to kind of like work around what's required or what the job entails and kind of connect yourself to it in certain ways, even if it's not like obvious. Now, number 4, you definitely want to prepare some questions for the end of it. Because usually by the end of it, they'll be like, oh, do you have any questions for me? And all that. And you definitely want some. I would say 2 to 3. One that I think is always a good one is asking what the culture is like and asking like how the company is and stuff like that. Because, you know, a part of like having a job, you want to go to a job with a good culture. And like good people, like a good atmosphere, a good environment. Let's say you ask that and they kind of give an answer that's like, you're probably gonna be like, I don't even think I want to work here. So like, if you don't hire me, that's great. But also if you do, I might not take it because that was weird. Also, another great question is kind of turning the tables again a little on the interviewer, because the thing with interviews that you have to keep in mind is it's not just you need a job, they also need an employee. As much as this is an interview for you to get hired, they're looking for somebody because they need somebody. So you want to like ask them the question like, hey, like, how would this job like benefit me? Like, is this a career choice or like a job, a company that would help evolve my career and take it to the next step and help me grow in this industry? And again, usually they'll say yes. And they'll be like, of course, this is the best company ever. And then you can decide for yourself whether or not they're BSing you. And it's good because it also kind of puts them on the spot. It makes them kind of like the person being interviewed. And you know, it makes them in a position where they're selling their company to you. And you're not just selling yourself to the company. Now, last but not least, and I think this is arguably the most important, you just need to relax and be yourself. Because ultimately, what's going to make someone want to hire you is good energy and your ability to kind of mesh well with the team. You could kind of be qualified and have all these good things, but if you just have a bad vibe or it just doesn't seem like you're gonna fit into the team and like flourish with it, they're not gonna wanna hire you. Now, if they're desperate and really need someone knowledgeable, probably. But not to say you need to be like, oh, Not to say that you need to be like crazy or like have the biggest personality, but just like relax and being yourself. Like I said before, it's not just you trying to find a job, they're trying to find an employee. So they need you just as much as you need them. So kind of try to think that way so it puts you on like an even playing field with them. Also just relax, because even if this interview doesn't work out, it's an experience of an interview that you can take with your next one. And you can learn some things, take some things that you thought went well, some other things that you know didn't, and get rid of those. And like, it's all just really a learning process. And you're never gonna get better at interviewing unless you like do interviews more. Which sucks, because interviews suck. But it is what it is. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are the 5 interview tips that I really think, if all else fails, you should take along with you during the interview process. I think they're the 5 most important. And you know, interviewing sucks. It's the worst, but we gotta do it. With that being said, thank y'all so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye! One question you shouldn't ask is like, oh, how's the pay? I asked that once. It was in college in like an internship, so like who cares? But looking back, I was like, why did I ask that? I was so shocked when they didn't pick me, and I was like, well...